Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Zane Stevens and Tony Quintong. I'm so happy to have you on my podcast called You Are Not Alone, and we're certainly not alone with you gentlemen this morning, so I'm looking forward to this conversation. Zane is the CEO, director, I guess, director of Protea Financial, and has a phenomenal background and story to tell about the work that Protea Financial does. Tony Quintong is the CEO of Securieon, and Tony and I have had an interview before. And Tony's also a Vistage chair. I'm a Vistage chair in Sonoma County, and working with leaders like Zane and Tony is one of my callings, and I like to share their story with our members and also with the community at large. So, Zane, tell us a little bit about how you got from South Africa working with KPMG all the way over to Sonoma County. What brought you here?
Yeah, it's not the most exciting story in the world. My wife was working for a winery out in Stellenbosch area. It had American ownership. She started out there as sort of their CFO, did a bit of a acting general manager role for a while, and then once they hired back to the CFO role, the investment group split up into two different companies, and the group that she worked closely with were looking for a CFO, so they reached out to her to see if she'd be interested in heading over to Marin County to come work for them. We made a decision in about 8 minutes and said, sure, let's go for it.
I love it.
So that was in 2013. We had nothing really tying us down at that point.
Right.
I did have a very good job at a company called Syntel, which was in the technology space with a big focus on traffic engineering. Um, but it wasn't anything super spectacular that I thought I had to, stay because the opportunities were great. So she came over around April. I came around in August, and we've been here ever since.
Fantastic. And your training was all at KPMG. Did you enjoy the work there?
I did. In South Africa, to get your CPA qualification, chartered accountancy qualification, you have to go through a traineeship, and the vast majority of people in South Africa will do it through what we call audit firms, CPA firms here in the US. I was fortunate enough to be signed up by a Big Four in my hometown of Port Elizabeth. I spent 3 years there. First 2 years was a true traineeship, doing the audit route, working the long hours. I was fortunate enough, though, to finish my core hours within 2 years of starting. So in year three, effectively, they could use me however they wanted to, and it gave me the opportunity to travel the country, work on audits with, some of the major partners in the bigger centers, move on to a lot of projects in the consulting space, definitely sort of being sold at a rate much higher than my level. So they definitely got their buck out of me for that portion. I was heavily recruited when I finished my traineeship after 3 years, but I had met somebody who is now my wife and decided that I did not want to move to a bigger center. I wanted to be by her. It obviously ended up being a great decision. And eventually she got the job at the winery, which moved us from Port Elizabeth back to Cape Town, where she came from.
Well, I can see why KPMG likes you because you showed good judgment in all the things that you were doing.
They liked the judgment. They probably didn't like
Believe
the
me.
the attitude that always because I was not the easiest person to manage in my youth. I was always running on to the next project, stepping over people's heads. So there was a lot of mentoring to sort of keep me down. The partner in the office that I worked for didn't truly believe I was good as everybody said he was. So that's why he sent me to work with the most meanest partners around the country. And when they started giving me top ratings, he was very disappointed, and they had to sort of acknowledge that I was pretty good at my job.
You know what? The cream rises to the top, Zane, and you were part of the cream rising to the top.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about hard work, right? I've never been the smartest guy in the room, but I'm willing to listen, hear what people have to say, and then just put in the extra effort to make sure that I meet the expectations of, the group around me.
Yeah, it's the ability is one thing, the smarts are one thing, but the grit and determination, I think, usually wins the day.
Yeah, and I found that if I'm very efficient with using my time, that makes a big difference as well. And that's,
Mhm.
focusing on prioritization, understanding what's really important in the situation and not getting lost too much in the detail. So always trying to step back and look at the big picture is always, helped me a lot because I'd be able to sort of get more done because I'm focusing on the important things rather than getting stuck in the detail.
Fantastic. We'd like to hear more about that. Tony, you might want to give our viewership a little bit about your background, Securion, the work you're doing.
Well, thanks, Bill. I've had a chance to work with a number of CFOs and large CPA firms and so forth, so I can appreciate what Zane has gone through. But I can honestly say that oftentimes when you have challenging people you work with, or challenging people you work for, uh, it's difficult at the time to kind of take a little step back and say, well, what did I learn from this experience? So I can say that having worked with a number of challenging clients as well, I built a niche in this market called pre-M&A. So we do a lot of drop-in fractional CEO work. That's number one. Number two, the 90% of our customers are not ready for an M&A transaction, nor do they even understand the whole process. And we're happy to have that niche market where we're actually helping early stage and late stage companies get to the point where they can have leverage for liquidity. And one of the things I wanted to ask Zane, though, is having worked with a number of challenging folks in the past, what is one or two things you've learned from that experience that have influenced how you lead your current company today?
I was very fortunate that I had a manager that sort of sat me down and, he went like, you're doing nothing wrong, but you have to understand in an organization there is a hierarchy. And what I sort of did in my early stage was just ignore the hierarchy and just like, hey, if I need somebody honest a question, I'm gonna go directly to that person instead of going through, the right channels. And it was just sort of, you're not doing anything wrong, but you got to learn to respect the people around you. And, you know, it's like you could still get the same answer, but going to the person who's next in line who you're reporting to and being like, hey, I have a question about this. Are you able to assist me or can I go talk, to the client specifically? And it's just sort of being mindful of the people around you and understanding that your actions will affect them. And I try to take that into my everyday sort of leadership process and going, if I'm going to make this next step, who are the people I need to talk to within this process? Who's it going to have the biggest effect on? Let's make sure that they're at least aware of the situation before I just drop the news on everybody. And just trying to be a little bit more mindful, a bit kinder to people. I think that goes a long way because people feel like you're respecting them. And if you're respecting them, they can buy into your decisions.
Well,
There's a
it sounds
huge
like
amount of what you said there, Zane. I'd like to amplify on that. But Tony, you had another comment or
I would
question.
say that is terrific advice uh, coming from you and leading your organization and being involved with your other folks. It sounds almost like a balancing act, would you say, Zane, between this is the proper channels to go through, which is high emotional intelligence, saying, hey, this is how we should do things to keep everyone's integrity. There is a hierarchy. We have to respect that. But the other component of that is some people look at that as a political, not you. I can honestly hear you from a genuine standpoint that this is that type of situation. How do you get around that?
It's it's a tough situation because you have to make a decision on a daily basis on who needs to know what. And I think that is a difficult concept for people to understand is that not everybody needs to know everything, and you will get to know things when you need to get them. And the person next up the chain is going to make that decision. They're probably not going to get the decision right every single time, but if you can believe in the person that you're working with, that they're doing it in a genuine, honest way, that they're not out to sort of get you every single time, it is then that person's responsibility to sort of accept the way the information is filtered. And if they're not comfortable, or at the end of the day, they're not happy with the decision or the way the decision was handled, have the ability to stand up and say, hey, next time, do you mind letting me know earlier? Could you mind saying it in a different way? Having those honest conversations. And I try create an environment where people can talk up about their feelings as much as possible. Sometimes I'll be like, great, I'm probably going to do it exactly the same way next time, and it takes courage to be able to do that as well, because it's easy to just sort of bend to everybody's will. But as a leader, you've got to realize that you've got to take people's emotions into account, but you also have to know when it's your decision and you're the one who's accountable at the end of the day, that sometimes you just have to sort of step around people and go ahead with your decision, especially if you truly believe in it.
Do you think?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. Go ahead, Tony.
I'm just going to say one more thing on this emotional intelligence, which is really the foundation for this. Do you think that's something that you can teach, or is that something innate within someone's personality, or how do you deal with emotional intelligence and bestowing the importance of that with your own team and your clients?
Yeah, I think we all have a level of emotional intelligence that comes through our upbringing. And depending on how your sort of childhood went and how you were raised, I think that will change. I think emotional intelligence is built from a very young age. Doesn't mean that somebody with a low emotional intelligence can't be taught to better, deal with those situations. I do think in a professional setting with the right coaching and mentoring, everybody could improve their emotional intelligence. But the difficult part about, improving emotional intelligence is you have to understand what your emotional intelligence levels are. And obviously there are tests out there, and being able to have the opportunity to take one of those tests and see where you're strong and where you're not so strong is really important, because being aware of your shortfalls allows you the opportunity to work on them and improve. For me, I didn't get to do that test up early, but I did have somebody sit down and be like, you just have to think about other people first. Like, again, you're doing nothing wrong, but accounting is a people business, life's a people business, and you actually have to worry about the people. And I'm not a big people person. I'm happy to sit in my house by myself for the rest of my life. But if I want to be successful in life, I do have to know how to interact with people, and being able to develop those skills and take feedback when maybe my reaction or the way I've handled situations hasn't been perfect in the eyes of the people around them is really important. And I think being able to create an environment where you get feedback from the people around you is very, very important. And again, you don't have to take all the feedback, but you should listen to it, assess it, and to make a decision, yes or no, should I make a change?
Mm.
Yeah,
Great.
Zane, this is fascinating. Great questions, Tony, about emotional intelligence and then chains of command and so forth. I had 4 years in U.S. Navy, and the chain of command is in absolute steel. You never break the chain of command.
Oh,
Um,
they would have kicked me out in like the first week, I
yeah, I
think.
think you probably would have had a very brief career in the
Hmm.
Navy.
Yeah.
But anyway, 2013, you moved from South Africa to Sonoma County with your wife, and you founded Protea. Tell why the name Protea, and tell us a little bit about your company.
Yeah, so January 1st of 2014, I started working for the same company as my wife, the Winery Investment Fund. I came in as an analyst, and we had a couple of investments in different winery projects. And we quickly realized that I could not really do any analyst work if we did not have any accounting information. So we were sitting in what is now my business partner, my boss at the time's apartment in San Francisco, and going, hey, how can we make this happen? And we came up with the idea of hiring people in South Africa to do the bookkeeping work, so that we have the information to make, the good decision to put the budgets, the forecast, everything together. So that's sort of how on then March 1st, 2014, we decided, okay, we're going to start Protea. We didn't have a name to start with. I sort of sat down and went, well, we're going to do accounting. We're going to use people in South Africa. I am South Africa. So how do we show the link to my home country? And the national flower of South Africa is the Protea. It's a pretty beautiful picture, flower. It's used in a lot of restaurants. Um, and I thought, what a better way to connect the two countries? We're doing the work in the US, we're using South African staff, let's use the national flower of South Africa. And that's how we came up with the name of Protea Financial.
Wow. Great. What a great.
Fabulous. I love that. And the focus is on the wine industry. And most of your clients are small wine owners. I would assume. Tell us about that and why you zeroed in on that.
So, I mean, that's just where we started, just because, that's where we got going, specifically to deal with our winery investments. In the early stages, we really did take on anybody. I would say for the first 3 years, wine made up maybe 30 or 40% of our book. We had a big concentration in beauty products as well as in entertainment. We looked after the books of a large local music festival. And when that music festival went away, they were acquired by a listed company, and we had to move on. We sat down and said, okay, where are our expertise? Where do we think we can add the most value? And looking at the book of clients and where we had the most success, we decided that the wine industry would be a good place to spend our time. As of today, it's about 95% of our book in terms of revenue is winery. So we do have a small mix of clients that aren't wineries. I like to call them the plus ones. So if a winery owner comes to us and he has another business, we'll help
Right.
them with it. And then we also do a fair amount of trust and personal accounting stuff as well. We currently look after about 170 small wineries. Vast majority of them produce between 2 and 5,000 cases, with the smallest production size about 400 cases and the largest around 300,000 cases.
And the specific value add that you present to these small wineries that when you are talking or get an introduction, what do you say to them?
And so, we tell them our story. We give them insight on what we do, everything from bookkeeping through to CFO level services. And then the big advantage we have is because we're using talent in South Africa, our prices are lower than the market prices in the US. We also take advantage of the time difference. It's 10 time zones apart. So at the moment it's 10 hours. When the clocks change, it'll be 9 hours, which allows our team to move a little bit quicker and be a little bit more nimble. We've seen a lot of success, especially when people are in a sort of sell phase and they are dealing with diligence. When they're able to get something from the buyer at 4 o'clock, we're able to send it to our team about 8 o'clock the next morning. They have the answer, is huge in being able to move a transaction forward. Bankers like it as well. Insurance companies like it. Investors like it when they can get information quickly. It's an interesting, psychology behind accounting information. If it takes you a long time to get accounting information, the longer it takes, the less the trust in the numbers become. If you can
Really?
turn over numbers, yeah, because if you can turn them over quickly, they mean you must be prepared, they must be ready, and they must be up to date, right? The longer you take, well, oh, you must be working on these numbers, so you're either hiding something or your books aren't up to scratch.
Interesting.
So that speed creates confidence, which builds trust. But our biggest value add on the day to day for our wineries is that we're very good at cost accounting. My early days at KPMG was the automotive space, so inventory was a very big portion of what I did. So we add a lot of value by being, very good at inventory costing and be able to give our clients very specific and accurate costs of what their wine truly costs, so they can make better decisions around pricing as well as marketing efforts around those products.
Tony, you had a question.
Well, it's interesting from what we're reading from the press. There seems to be a slowdown in wine sales, maybe even what we call boutique or cocktail sales. Are you seeing that with your clients, or you're saying that there's such a niche for what they offer that they haven't been affected by less millennials or even Gen Z not buying wine anymore? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the wine industry, as is the whole alcohol beverage space, is on the decline. That's just pure facts. We saw a little bump during the pandemic, and now we're seeing some normalization back to 2019 numbers, which was the start of the decline. Part of that is the healthy living movement that we're going through at the moment, which has been seen sort of in the 80s, and the alcohol beverage industry bumped up from it. A large portion of it is that, you know, China's appetite for foreign imports has decreased a lot over the last few years as well. A lot of countries upped their production to be able to serve China. And then they came out of the pandemic and said, don't worry, we figured it out ourselves. We'll handle it. So you're seeing a problem for the wine industry globally. France at the moment actually has government programs to have vines pulled out the ground.
Hmm.
When I
Really? I
attend,
had no idea. My
yeah,
goodness.
yeah, they've just got too much. And, they don't want to decrease their prices. So the way to do that is to subsidize the wineries pull out so there's less production. The tough part for the US that's affecting it as well is with all these other markets closing down, imports have become greater in the US, affecting, your local producers, because even with tariffs and, taxes that go with import, it's still a much cheaper product when it comes into the US because of our cost of labor, the strength of the dollar, all of those things are taken into account. So it is a tough market. The statistics say about 30% of wineries had positive sales in 2024. On my last review of our clients, about 70% of them had positive years last year. So because of the size of our winery and the focus on direct to consumer versus wholesale, we do see our wineries, doing a little bit better than the market rates. And, even in that 70% doesn't mean they're doing significantly better. It could be flat or, 1 or 2% increase. But it is still better than the market where we're seeing some large drop-offs. And it's just a difficult place. People have to adjust how they sell wine because the people that they have been selling the wine to are getting gray hair or, leaving this planet altogether. So you
Oh my
need
God.
to figure it out who you're selling to.
Mhm.
A lot of them have ignored the millennial generation for quite a while and have lost some opportunities there. And now we're all having to deal with Gen Zs, which is a very different generation, have very different buying patterns, and they focus on values over product a lot of the time as well. So how do you sell to these people that you're not used to selling to is a big challenge for most people. And, you know, the best people who adapt to that process will prosper, and the ones that get sort of stuck in their old ways will most likely disappear.
Right.
Have you looked at adjacent markets for your practice if the wine industry becomes less in demand for your expertise? What other markets have you been looking at that could be adjacent?
Uh, Yeah, we haven't really gone too far off there's 11,000 wineries in the US. We have 170 of them, so our market share is so small. We would literally need the industry to be obliterated for us to have any true effect on us. I mean, it is different in the last 2 years that we haven't experienced in prior years where we have had wineries go out of business. We definitely have pressure where clients are asking for less services because it is, t cash is tight. Um, we'll look at the peripheries of alcohol beverage in general. We've sort of focused a little bit more in doing personal accounting and help people understand where they're spending their own money, especially for winery owners. But we're still very focused on the wine industry. We still believe in it, and we believe we can add a lot of value.
Great.
Excellent. What are your long range aspirations for Protea, Zane, and how do you see you know the opportunities for you?
Yeah, I mean, in the short term is where I'm sort of focusing right now. I spent a lot of 2024 making sure Protea was in a place that they didn't need me. I would say, we're in February 2025. In January 2024, if a bus knocked me over and I was gone, Protea would probably have closed down in a few months.
Oh my,
I was
yeah.
I was doing way too much. The company was way too reliant on me. Sitting in February 2025, if that same bus knocked me over today, the company would carry on. They'd have a moment of silence at a team meeting and life would just continue. So we're in a good place from that standpoint. There's
Mhm.
still some things I want to do to improve, especially take over some of my key duties and make the business even less reliant on me and make sure that we have a team in place to take the business forward if I was not around anymore. So that's a lot of where I'm focusing at the moment. I don't plan on going anywhere. I plan to do this, at least until my kids finish high school. So, give me another 10 years of doing this job is sort of my focus. But really, if I look further out, we don't have any specific growth plans. We do continue to want to grow. Where we're going to grow to, we're still trying to figure it out. But at the moment, we're just trying to help as many people as possible.
And I have to ask a question because everybody, in fact, I finished a meeting just an hour ago on AI, and AI like it and all that that's
Hmm.
going on. The impact on the accounting industry from artificial intelligence, and are you using it, and how much do you use it if you do?
Yes, I use AI on a daily basis around, idea generation for content. So that is a big part of my job is the business development and marketing side of the business. So I use that in an everyday basis. We have a tech team in place that reviews our technology on a regular basis and is also looking into different softwares which are integrating AI successfully to make our clients' lives easier as well as our lives easier. So we're seeing a lot of changes but probably not as fast as people think they're happening. A lot of what people are marketing as AI in the accounting space is really AI that was always there, and now they're just slapping AI on it, and just to keep up with the Joneses a little bit. Um, there is varying responses out there on who will be the most affected in the accounting space on AI. There is a group that says the bookkeeping work, which is a large part of our business, will disappear really quickly because, you know, easy work can be replaced. There is another group showing that, hey, actually doing bookkeeping is really difficult because it's not as black and white. It's not just is it A or is it B? There
Mhm.
is a multitude of options when somebody buys from, Ace Hardware. It might not just be for repairs and maintenance. It could be cleaning products. It could be they needed a new lock. There's different things that could be coming through the process. I mean, it could even be furniture to be put in the tasting room. So it's it's hard to predict where it's going to go. We do know that it will have a major effect on it, and it is something we do focus in on. And we are looking at creative ways to use AI to improve our practice as well as provide extra value to our clients by using the intelligence and the mass searchability that AI has.
So it's a value add for Protea to do that. Um,
Mhm.
I know that you have your. I've been fortunate enough to be on your podcast. Tell the our audience a little bit about your podcast and what you do.
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Protea Conversations. Um, the whole idea behind it is just to sit down and talk to people. what I've realized through my career, the best way and one of the most effective ways that I've learned is just talking to smart people, having the opportunity. And this is probably why I got me in trouble at KPMG as well, because they'd find me in the CFO's office for an hour and like, what do you guys talk about? Like, I didn't ask him a single question that was on in front of me, but just listening to what they're saying, getting advice from smart people. Bill, you and I have had these conversations a lot of time where I just absorb all the information you give me and I go and take that and I figure out ways to use in my life to be better. So I took that concept and said, let's just sit down with people. Let's talk to them. Let's find out about their history. Let's try find as much pieces of information we can. How many golden nuggets can we find in every conversation, and just share that with people. The idea that if we share knowledge more, we have the opportunity to have a better future and better leaders, which hopefully will make our society in general better.
And you have a pretty large following. How many people follow your website?
Um, my website, like Protea's website,
Yeah,
we get about, I mean, 2 to 5,000 visitors to our website with about 120 to 240,000 impressions a month.
exactly. And then for your podcast, your viewership there, any measurement?
Yeah, it's not great. We get about somewhere between 60 and 80 views per episode.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I wish it was better, but I also view it in the same way that I just need to change one person's life through these conversations, and then I'll be happy.
There you go.
So that's where I spend the time. I think where I try and make the biggest impact and share as much information is on my LinkedIn page, where I've just gone over 10,000
Hmm.
followers, and
Wonderful.
I get some great engagement there, and I'm able to share small pieces of the interview on a regular basis there, and those tend to lead to a lot of good conversation, hopefully making difference in people's lives.
That's fantastic. Tony, I've kind of cut you off there, my man. Go
No,
ahead.
and in fact, I'm practicing active listening, which is what Zane just talked about. I just wanted to ask one question. If you take one lesson you learned last year and you're moving forward 2025, what would that be for you as the CEO of your firm? What lesson will you do differently this year versus last year?
Yeah, we had a year of a lot of change, and what I realized is that change is a process, and you can't really force change in the way that, you can't just bulldoze over everything. Change is a process, and you have to understand that people are involved in it, and you got to get them involved and engaged in the change and make sure that there's buy-in. At times, I've implemented changes last year where maybe I didn't have the buy-in that I needed, and the effect of the change wasn't as impactful as I would have hoped it to be. So going into this year, I am making it a sort of conscious decision when a change is made to make sure that there is a better process going into each change to get more buy into the process, that people believe in the change we're making and understand how it will impact their lives or our clients' lives, and that it is a worthwhile change and that it's not just some, spur of the moment Zane decided this is a shiny object we want to do. It's actually a well thought out process. So I'm really considering the way I handle change in 2025 and making sure that I get buy-in from people to have better effect.
Great,
You
great
know,
idea.
Tony and I are Visage chairs. Our groups are made up of CEOs and directors like yourselves, Zane, and the challenges they have in leadership and in planning are very much similar to yours. So, what advice would you give to a Visage group of CEOs about leadership, your philosophy, and how best to handle your employees and handle your future and have a successful business?
I always feel like the best advice you can give anybody is to remind people that you're working with people. I think sometimes we forget that we're in the people business if you're in leadership, and people are not mechanical. I like to call myself a robot. You can send me instructions and off I go. It's easy, right? But that's not the norm. Most people have emotions. Most people have their own ideas, and most people have things going on in their lives. It's very few and far between that have a perfect life with nothing weird or wonderful happening in their life. Everybody has
Mhm.
a little bit of trauma, and we need to take that into consideration when we're working with people. Not in that we have to wear, you know, oven gloves around people and touch them like, you know. be careful with this guy. They might fall apart, right? But we do have to understand that people have emotions and people are going to be thinking about every step we do. And we need to make sure that we're treating people like people and holding them, giving them responsibility and holding them accountable. I think it's critically important that it sometimes gets overseen. A dictatorship does not work. Um, it's sometimes necessary in certain decisions, but if that's your go-to, you're most likely going to fail in leadership.
Absolutely.
Great.
Wonderfully said, Zane. Tony, follow up?
Well, I think he's encapsulated. We are in the people business, and even though AI seems to be everywhere, particularly in the state of California, we are people centric. So I love the advice. We can't just change culture immediately, and those changes, oftentimes we have to try it and move along and maybe raise the bar a little bit. But the boil the ocean approach, my way or the highway, doesn't work. And the dictatorship, I absolutely agree with. It does not work. If you could find people to buy into the vision and then lead by example, I think that eases that cultural change momentum tremendously. So well said, Zane.
And I would like to add, like with AI coming in place, the people aspect becomes even more important because a lot of the routine and mundane tasks are going to be taken away, which then means, okay, the stuff that we were able to hide behind before as leaders is no longer there. So the people portion of it's become even more important because you can't just say I'm busy because AI is probably going to do that busy work for you anyway. So if you want to be a good leader in this market where technology is sort of taking the lead a little bit, that means to keep people around, you're going to have to show your leadership skills, show your vision, and hold yourself accountable more than ever.
Yep. Great
That's
point.
yeah, beautifully said because it's the emotional intelligence and empathy in leadership today seem to be more and more required, and absolutely to be successful, we have to do it. Zane, you have done a wonderful job, okay, in explaining Protea, your philosophy, what you're doing. Very impressive, I must say. I've enjoyed knowing you, and we appreciate Tony and I, you being on our You Are Not Alone. And thank goodness people are not alone, but they have Zane Stevens around.